And again, tell man, today I want to take you back, way back, to the wisdom of a man who lived over 500 years ago, Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher and founder of Taoism. He never sought fame, power, or fortune. Instead, he sought harmony with life itself, and what he understood then about balance, simplicity, and inner peace is precisely what we've lost in today's fast-paced, hyper-connected world. We live in an age of more information, more technology, more distractions. But Lao Tzu taught the value of less. He believed in Wu Wei, the art of effortless action. Not laziness, but alignment, doing less to achieve more, acting in flow with nature rather than against it. Pride ourselves on control over our schedules, our image, even over others. But Lao Tzu reminded us that life is not meant to be controlled, only understood, he said. Who tries to control the world ruins it. He emphasized humility over ego, silence over noise, stillness over chaos. And yet, in our modern lives, we often mistake speed for success and loudness for leadership. Forgetting his wisdom, we've created imbalance in ourselves, in our relationships, and in our world. Lao Tzu taught that true power comes not from domination, but from softness. Water is fluid, soft, and yielding. But water will wear away rock. In other words, vulnerability is not weakness, it is strength in disguise. So today, I challenge you, reclaim what we've forgotten. Slow down. Observe nature. Embrace silence. Listen more. Judge less. Go of control. Choose presence over performance. Because sometimes the most revolutionary act is not to push harder, but to pause. And in that pause, you may just hear the voice of Lao Tzu, reminding us that the way to a full life is not found in striving, but in being. In our modern society, complexity is often mistaken for sophistication. We fill our schedules, our homes, and even our minds with an overwhelming array of things, tasks, notifications, possessions, and ambitions. We are constantly moving, striving, multitasking. It's as if being busy has become a badge of honor and accumulation is equated with success. Yet, Lao Tzu's philosophy reminds us that this endless pursuit rarely brings lasting fulfillment. Instead, he teaches that true strength and clarity come from simplicity. Lao Tzu believed that a simple life is a powerful one, not because it lacks ambition, but because it is free from unnecessary burdens. When we strip away the excess, whether it's material possessions, social expectations, or mental clutter, we create space. Space to breathe, to think, to feel, and most importantly, to be. Simplicity is not about doing without, it's about making room for what really matters, about discerning what is essential and letting go of what is not. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu wrote, manifest plainness, embrace simplicity, reduce selfishness, have few desires. These aren't instructions for a life of deprivation, they are keys to inner peace. When we embrace simplicity, we are no longer enslaved by the opinions of others or the pressure to constantly perform. We regain our autonomy. We begin to notice the small joys, a quiet morning, a genuine conversation, the beauty of nature. These are the things that nourish the soul. Moreover, simplicity gives rise to clarity. Think of a muddy pool of water. If left undisturbed, it clears. The same is true for the mind. A life stripped of noise and distraction becomes fertile ground for insight, creativity, and genuine happiness. Simplicity also fosters resilience. A simple life, not tethered to luxury or constant validation, is less fragile and more adaptable. We learn to be content with less and find strength not in having more, but in needing less. Ultimately, Lao Tzu's view of simplicity challenges our deeply ingrained notions of power and progress. It asks us to reevaluate what we truly need and to rediscover the immense strength that lies in stillness, clarity, and ease. In a world addicted to complexity, choosing simplicity is not a step backward, it's a return to wisdom, one of the most profound and yet widely misunderstood concepts in Lao Tzu's philosophy is Wu Wei, often translated as effortless action or non-action. At first glance, it might appear to advocate passivity or inaction, but in truth, Wu Wei is a dynamic and deeply intelligent way of being in the world, not about doing nothing. It is about doing everything in harmony with the natural flow of life. In today's culture, we glorify hustle. We are constantly told to grind, push harder, and take control of our destiny. Success is portrayed as a product of relentless effort and domination over obstacles. Yet Lao Tzu offers a radically different approach. Instead of forcing life to bend to our will, why not align ourselves with its inherent rhythm? Wu Wei teaches us that there is great power in letting go of resistance and acting in accordance with the Tao, the natural way of things. Imagine a river winding through a valley. It doesn't push or strain, but it moves with persistence and purpose. It flows around rocks, over cliffs, and eventually reaches the ocean. Not because it fights, because it follows its path. This is Wu Wei, a way of engaging with the world that is responsive, intuitive, and adaptive rather than aggressive and controlling. When we practice Wu Wei, we don't cease to act. We act wisely, at the right moment in the right way, without excess effort. A skilled musician, a gifted athlete, or a master craftsman all embody Wu Wei when they are in the zone, performing with ease, grace, and precision, not through brute force, but through refined intuition and flow. They are not overthinking or overtrying. They are simply present, and through presence, their actions become artful and effective. Lao Tzu's message is not that we abandon responsibility, but that we stop struggling against the current of life. This doesn't mean surrendering our goals. It means pursuing them without unnecessary tension. When we resist what is, we suffer. When we align with what is, we thrive. In personal relationships, Wu Wei means allowing others to be who they are instead of trying to mold or fix them. In leadership, it means guiding through example and subtle influence rather than force. In daily living, it means releasing the urge to constantly manipulate outcomes and instead trusting the natural intelligence of life to unfold as it should. Practicing Wu Wei requires trust in the moment, trust in ourselves, and trust in the deeper currents that move life forward. Challenges the ego's desire for control and invites us to experience a more graceful and sustainable way of living. It is a philosophy that says less friction, more flow. Less pushing, more presence. In a world dominated by planning, prediction, and performance, the idea that we are in control offers a comforting illusion. We create schedules, set goals, make projections, and track every metric, believing that if we just work hard enough and think smart enough, we can shape life precisely to our will. But Lao Tzu, with his deep understanding of the natural world and human nature, saw through this illusion. He warned us that the need to control ourselves, others, and the world around us often leads not to peace or order, but to chaos, resistance, and disappointment. Lao Tzu wrote in the Tao Te Ching, "He who tries to control the world ruins it. He who tries to grasp it loses it." These words challenge one of the most deeply ingrained beliefs in modern life, that mastery comes through domination. But if we observe nature, we see that control is not its mode of operation. The seasons change without interference. Rivers carve mountains over time. Animals adapt instinctively to their environments. Everything flows in a vast, interconnected dance without a central commander. Nature operates through harmony, not control, and yet human beings often try to impose structure on what is inherently fluid. We try to control time, emotions, relationships, and outcomes. We try to control how others see us, how fast success arrives, even how the world should unfold. But life is inherently uncertain. No matter how meticulously we plan, unexpected events can upend our expectations in an instant. Illness, loss, change, these are not exceptions. They are natural elements of the human journey. This doesn't mean we should live passively or give up intention. What Lao Tzu teaches is that our obsession with control causes suffering because it places us in opposition to life's flow. When things don't go as we demand, we feel anxiety, frustration, or despair. Not because life is unfair, because we expect it to control it. In truth, control is brittle. It fractures under pressure. Flexibility, on the other hand, is resilient. When we stop grasping, we begin to adapt. Letting go of control does not make us weak. It liberates us. It allows us to respond rather than react. It makes space for wisdom to emerge rather than forcing decisions from fear. It teaches us to be present with what is, rather than endlessly trying to shape what should be. As Lao Tzu might say, the more we try to force things, the more we interfere with their natural unfolding. The more we loosen our grip, the more clearly we see. In relationships, insight is transformative. Trying to control others breeds conflict and resentment. Trusting others, allowing them space to be themselves, fosters connection and authenticity. In leadership, letting go of micromanagement and trusting in the talents of a team creates an environment where people thrive. In personal growth, letting go of rigid self-expectations opens the door to true learning and self-acceptance. Lao Tzu's wisdom reminds us that the need for control comes from fear. Fear of uncertainty, of vulnerability, of not being enough. But when we understand that life is not meant to be tamed but to be trusted, we begin to experience a deeper freedom. We move with life, not against it. We learn that strength is not about holding on tightly, but about knowing when to let go. At the heart of Lao Tzu's teachings is a profound reverence for nature, not just as a background for human activity, but as a living, breathing guide to how we should live our lives. For Lao Tzu, nature was not separate from us, it was us. He saw the universe as one interconnected system, a flowing whole where everything has its place and purpose. He called this natural order the Tao, the way, and believed that by observing and aligning with nature's rhythms, we could find balance, peace, and fulfillment. Modern life, by contrast, often stands in stark opposition to these natural rhythms. We wake up to alarms instead of the sun. We work by artificial light, eat food grown with chemicals, spend much of our time disconnected from the earth beneath our feet. We chase productivity, speed, and consumption, often at the cost of physical health, mental well-being, and environmental sustainability. In doing so, we have not only lost touch with the natural world, but also with our own inner nature. Lao Tzu's philosophy urges us to return, to slow down, to observe, and to live in harmony with the cycles of life rather than fighting them. He wrote, "Man follows the earth follows the universe. The universe follows the Tao follows what is natural." This means that the greatest wisdom is not found in resisting what is natural, but in flowing with it. When we tune into the changing seasons, the rhythms of the day, the rise and fall of our own energy and emotions, we begin to understand that everything has its time and nothing needs to be rushed. Balance in this sense, not a rigid equilibrium, but a dynamic dance. Just as nature balances day with night, growth with decay, and storm with calm, we too must learn to honor both activity and rest, joy and sorrow, ambition and contentment. Lao Tzu recognized that imbalance is the root of suffering, whether it is in the body, the mind, or society at large. Too much striving leads to burnout, too much indulgence leads to stagnation. Balance is the key to health, sustainability, and peace. Harmony with nature also teaches humility. In nature, there is no hierarchy of importance. The mountain does not look down on the river. The tree does not compete with the flower. Thing fulfills its purpose simply by being what it is. Likewise, when we accept our own nature, our strengths, our limits, our place in the world, we let go of the exhausting need to prove or compare. We begin to live authentically, grounded in who we truly are. Lao Tzu also understood that when we live in disharmony with nature, we suffer not only individually but collectively. The environmental crises of our time, climate change, deforestation, pollution are all symptoms of a deeper spiritual imbalance. We have treated nature as a resource to be exploited rather than a sacred system to be respected. Lao Tzu's teachings are a call to heal this rift, not through blame or guilt, through a shift in awareness. To live with nature is not to retreat from life, but to return to a way of life that is wise, sustainable, and whole. By rediscovering balance and harmony with nature, we reconnect with the Tao, deeper flow of existence that moves beneath all things. We realize that we are not above nature or outside of it. We are nature. And when we live in accordance with that truth, begins to feel less like a struggle and more like a beautiful unfolding. In an age where self-promotion is often equated with success and dominance is mistaken for leadership, the concept of humility may seem outdated or even counterproductive. Yet Lao Tzu recognized humility as one of the most powerful virtues a person can embody. He saw it not as a weakness, as a deep inner strength. an alignment with the Tao that allowed one to lead without force, to influence without control, and to live without the constant need for validation or superiority. Lao Tzu observed that the strongest things in nature are often the least assuming. Water, for example, is soft, humble, and low, lying, yet it shapes mountains and nourishes life. In the Tao Te Ching, he wrote, "All streams flow to the sea because it is lower than they are. Humility gives it its power." This simple yet profound metaphor captures the essence of true strength. The most powerful people are not those who elevate themselves above others, but those who are willing to lower themselves, to listen, to serve, and to grow from every experience. Humility, in Lao Tzu's view, is the gateway to wisdom. When we assume we know everything, we close ourselves off from learning. But when we recognize the limits of our knowledge, we become teachable. We become curious. We open ourselves to new perspectives and deeper understanding. Humility allows us to live in a state of wonder and receptivity rather than arrogance and rigidity. In modern society, the ego often drives us to seek recognition, to compare ourselves to others, to accumulate achievements as proof of our worth. But this constant striving can become a trap, a never-ending loop of insecurity masked by performance. Humility offers a way out, invites us to root our value not in what we have or how we appear, but in who we are and how we treat others. A humble person does not need to broadcast their accomplishments or assert their importance, because they are grounded in something deeper, a quiet confidence and a genuine sense of self. Humility also transforms relationships. When we approach others with humility, we listen more and judge less. We become more compassionate, more understanding, and more open to connection. Lao Tzu believed that the best leaders were those who put themselves last, who served others without seeking praise, and who led not through command but through quiet example. A leader is best when people barely know he exists. He wrote, "When his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, 'We did it ourselves.'" This kind of leadership, based on humility, trust, and service, is rare but powerful. It creates loyalty, not fear. It inspires rather than coerces. It fosters growth rather than dependence. Principle can be applied not just in politics or business, but in families, friendships, and communities. Humility also teaches us acceptance. It helps us acknowledge our flaws without shame and our strengths without arrogance. Allows us to be human, imperfect, evolving, and interconnected with others. In recognizing that we are part of something greater, we stop trying to control or outshine, and we begin to contribute and collaborate. Humility, sense, is not the denial of our light, but the recognition that our light is not more important than anyone else's. Lao Tzu's reverence for humility is a reminder that the most enduring forms of power are quiet, patient, deeply rooted. In a noisy world where people clamor for attention, the humble person stands out, not because they shout, but because their presence speaks for itself. Carry the strength of one who has nothing to prove and everything to give. Few metaphors appear more frequently in Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching than water, and for good reason. To Lao Tzu, water wasn't just a physical element, it was a living embodiment of the Tao itself. It was soft, gentle, and yielding, yet at the same time, profoundly strong and transformative. "Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water," he wrote, "yet for dissolving the hard and inflexible, nothing can surpass it." This paradox lies at the heart of one of his most enduring teachings, that true strength is not always found in resistance, but in flexibility, patience, quiet persistence. In a culture that idolizes power in its most aggressive forms, control, domination, assertion, Lao Tzu's reverence for water offers a radical alternative. Water doesn't force its way forward, finds the path of least resistance. It doesn't try to overpower obstacles, it flows around them, over time wearing down even the hardest stone. It doesn't boast of its strength, yet it carves canyons and nourishes forests. Is the wisdom of water strength through softness, transformation through patience, and progress through humility? Lao Tzu saw in water a model for how humans might live more wisely. To embody the way of water means to be adaptable, rigid. Life is constantly changing, and those who cannot bend with it are often the ones who break. Water teaches us to be resilient, not by holding tight, but by letting go, by adjusting to circumstances without losing our essence. In every drop of water, there is a lesson in surrender, not as defeat, but as intelligent acceptance. To live like water also means to embrace stillness and clarity. A calm body of water reflects the world around it without distortion. Likewise, when our minds are clear and undisturbed, we perceive life with greater honesty and depth. This clarity allows us to respond rather than react, to make decisions that are wise rather than impulsive. Water doesn't rush, and yet it always arrives. In this way, Lao Tzu reminds us that there is great power in moving with intention, not haste. Moreover, water nurtures without discrimination. It quenches the thirst of the rich and poor alike, flows into the lowest valleys, never seeking status or recognition. Lao Tzu admired this quality of humility and service. He believed that just as water sustains life by quietly doing its work, we too can live meaningful lives through quiet acts of kindness, service, and compassion, without needing applause or attention. There is also a moral lesson in water's transparency and depth. On the surface, water may appear still or shallow, but beneath lies vastness. Similarly, Lao Tzu encourages us to cultivate depth in our character. Depth that may not always be visible, but that anchors us in wisdom and integrity. Like water, we should be clear in our intentions, deep in our values, and fluid in our interactions. In conflict, the wisdom of water teaches us not to meet force with more force, but with calm understanding. To deflect, to absorb, to outlast. In creativity, it shows us how to find our own way rather than mimic others, flowing into the unique shapes of our experiences. In leadership, models how to support others without controlling them, uplifting and guiding from below rather than dominating from above. Ultimately, to understand the wisdom of water is to understand the Tao, to recognize that gentleness can overcome hardness, that patience can outlast pressure, and that the most unassuming qualities often hold the greatest power. In every flowing stream and quiet pool, Lao Tzu saw a teacher, one that reminded him and reminds us of how to live with grace, flexibility, and strength that does not shout but endures. In a world that often equates complexity with sophistication, Lao Tzu's celebration of simplicity stands as a quiet revolution. His teachings remind us that in striving to make life more advanced, we may actually be making it more burdensome. Lao Tzu saw simplicity not as a lack of depth, as a return to what is essential and meaningful. I have just 3 things to teach. He wrote in the Tao Te Ching: simplicity, patience, compassion. These 3 are your greatest treasures. And of the 3, simplicity was the foundation, a way of living that brings clarity, freedom, and inner peace. Simplicity in Lao Tzu's vision is not about deprivation. It is not a call to live with nothing, but a call to let go of what is unnecessary. The art of decluttering, not just our homes, but our minds, our emotions, our ambitions. It is about peeling away the distractions and noise so we can see what truly matters. In simplicity, we are not diminished, we are refined. We become more focused, more aware, and more connected to the present moment. Modern life, by contrast, is overwhelmed by excess. We accumulate possessions, chase achievements, consume information at dizzying speeds. We complicate our relationships, our work, our goals with layers of expectation, comparison, and performance. The result is often stress, confusion, and disconnection. Lao Tzu saw this thousands of years ago and offered a different path, a way back to the natural ease of being. To live simply is to live in alignment with the Tao, to be content with less, and to recognize that more is not always better. Simplicity is strength because it fosters resilience. Simple life is less fragile. It doesn't depend on constant validation or the acquisition of more. When we live simply, we are less entangled by material needs and emotional attachments. We can weather change with greater calm. We are not clinging to things that are always shifting. Simplicity gives us room to breathe, to adapt, and to focus on what is within our control. In relationships, simplicity means honesty and authenticity. It means letting go of drama, pretense, and manipulation. It means communicating clearly, loving without conditions, and being present rather than perfect. In work, simplicity means efficiency and purpose. It's doing the task at hand with focus rather than being pulled in a dozen directions. In spirituality, simplicity means being still, listening deeply, and trusting the quiet voice within instead of constantly seeking outside approval or answers. Simplicity also fosters a deep sense of gratitude. When we stop chasing more, we start appreciating what we already have. We notice the beauty in small things, the morning light, a shared smile, a quiet moment. We begin to experience life more fully, not because we've added anything, but because we've removed the clutter that was obscuring our view. Lao Tzu's wisdom invites us to ask powerful questions. What can I let go of? What truly nourishes me? What am I complicating that could be made simple? These are not easy questions, especially in a culture that values business and accumulation, but they are transformative. By simplifying, we create space for joy, for connection, for peace. There is also moral strength in simplicity. A simple person is not distracted by greed or ego. They act with integrity, not out of calculation. They are less likely to deceive, manipulate, or exploit because they are not driven by complex agendas or endless desires. Simplicity allows us to live in alignment with our values, not because perfect, but because we are not hiding behind layers of ambition or fear. Lao Tzu's teachings on simplicity are ultimately a reminder of our natural state. Before the world told us who to be, what to own, and how to measure our worth, we were already enough. Simplicity is a return to that truth. A quiet, powerful way of living that doesn't require us to conquer the world, but to understand and live gently within it. In nearly every chapter of the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu speaks about desire, not to celebrate it, but to caution us against its grip. Unlike many modern philosophies that encourage us to manifest our wants or constantly strive for more, Lao Tzu presents a radically different views that the path to peace and wisdom begins with the release of excessive desire. No greater curse than desire, he writes, no greater sin than discontent. The greatest of all faults is to be conscious of desire. These words point not to asceticism or denial of all wants, but to a profound truth about the nature of human suffering. Much of it arises not from what life is, but from what we demand it to be. Desire, in Lao Tzu's teachings, is the root of imbalance, pulls us out of the present and into a perpetual state of longing for wealth, power, recognition, status, or pleasure. The more we chase, the more restless we become. And even when we obtain what we want, satisfaction is fleeting. Another desire arises to take its place. This cycle keeps us bound, always reaching but never arriving. It makes us believe that fulfillment is always out there, just beyond our grasp. But Lao Tzu invites us to stop chasing and instead be, to return to the stillness that lies beneath the noise of wanting. Letting go of desire does not mean losing ambition or becoming indifferent to life. Rather, means recognizing which desires serve us and which enslave us. Lao Tzu teaches discernment, the ability to know when a desire arises from true purpose and when it stems from ego, fear, or comparison. The difference between acting with intention and reacting with craving. When we are consumed by desire, we are easily manipulated, thrown off course, and blinded to what is already present and good in our lives. By releasing attachment to desire, we become more peaceful and more powerful. Not in the forceful sense, but in the quiet, grounded way of one who is no longer pulled in every direction. Our actions become clearer, simpler, more aligned with our inner truth rather than outer pressure. We stop trying to control outcomes and instead respond to life with acceptance and wisdom. This doesn't mean we don't care about goals or aspirations. We stop being owned by them. We can pursue things without clinging to them, love without possession, and work hard without needing constant reward. Letting go of desire also transforms our relationships. When we desire others to be a certain way or to fulfill certain roles in our emotional lives, we place heavy burdens on them. This can lead to disappointment, conflict, and control. When we let go of our need to shape others to our expectations, we create space for authenticity and deeper connection. We begin to love people for who they are, not for how they serve our desires. In a consumer-driven culture, we're constantly told that desire is good, that it fuels the economy, drives innovation, and defines progress. But Lao Tzu challenges this narrative. He suggests that true progress is not outward expansion, but inward stillness. A mind that is not ruled by desire is free. It can appreciate the present moment fully, without constantly comparing or grasping. It can find contentment not in having more, but in needing less. A deep liberation in this letting go. When we release our constant hunger for what we don't have, we awaken to the richness of what we do have. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. A quiet walk, a warm meal, a moment of breath. These simple experiences become enough, and in this enoughness we find the very fulfillment we were seeking all along, not by chasing it, but by letting go of the need to chase. Lao Tzu's wisdom is timeless because it strikes at the heart of our inner conflicts. Desires are natural, but being ruled by them leads to endless striving and suffering. Letting go is not an act of loss, but of return to our essence, clarity to freedom from the relentless pull of more. One of Lao Tzu's most revolutionary insights, especially for leaders and those in positions of influence, is the idea that the highest form of leadership is not control, dominance or command, but service. In the Tao Te Ching, he writes, "The highest rulers, people do not even know they have them. The next best are loved and praised. The next are feared. The worst are despised." This teaching subverts the typical image of leadership built on visibility and authority. For Lao Tzu, the most effective and respected leaders are those who lead so harmoniously, so humbly. Their influence feels invisible, natural like the Tao itself. To lead by serving is to lead without ego. It is to put the needs of the people or the group above the need for recognition or control. Doesn't mean the leader is passive or absent. On the contrary, it requires great wisdom, self-restraint, and strength of character. It means recognizing that power is not something to be exercised over others, but through empathy, understanding, and alignment with the greater good. This model of leadership is as relevant today as it was in ancient China. In a world where many leaders still operate from a place of command and control, Lao Tzu's vision offers a deeply human, compassionate alternative. A servant leader listens more than they speak. They empower others rather than taking credit. They build trust not through fear or manipulation, but by acting with integrity and consistency. They are not obsessed with their own importance, but focused on what is best for the whole. When a leader serves, creates space for others to thrive. They do not micromanage or dictate, they guide, support, and trust. This builds confidence in the team or community and encourages initiative, innovation, and cooperation. Lao Tzu likens such a leader to water, nourishing, supportive, and humble, always flowing to the lowest places, always available, yet never demanding recognition. Approach also fosters a sense of shared ownership and collective success. Lao Tzu says, when the master leads, the people say, "We did it ourselves." This is not because the leader did nothing, because their guidance was so attuned, so responsive, that it allowed others to find their own strength. True leadership, in Lao Tzu's eyes, is invisible not because it lacks impact, but because it leaves no trace of ego. Creates results without leaving behind the noise of self-importance. Leading by serving also calls for deep self-awareness. It means knowing when to step forward and when to step back, when to act, and when to allow others to act. It means letting go of the need to control every outcome and instead trusting in the natural process of growth and collaboration. This requires patience, humility, a genuine concern for the well-being of others. Qualities often undervalued in modern leadership, but which lie at the heart of the Taoist ideal. Importantly, Lao Tzu's philosophy of leadership isn't confined to kings or CEOs, applies to anyone in a position to influence others, parents, teachers, mentors, partners, community members. We all lead in some area of our lives, and the principles of service, humility, and attentiveness can transform how we show up in those roles. Leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. When we embrace the idea of leading by serving, we cultivate deeper respect, stronger relationships, and more enduring success. People follow not out of obligation or fear, but out of trust and inspiration. And in serving others, the leader is also transformed, becoming more grounded, more compassionate, and more aligned with the Tao. In this way, Lao Tzu teaches that true leadership is not about being above others, but walking among them with wisdom, care, and a heart committed to the common good. Lao Tzu's philosophy is deeply rooted in nature, not just in the external environment, but in the natural rhythms of life itself. His writings are filled with imagery of rivers, mountains, trees, valleys, and the seasons, not merely for poetic effect, but to point us toward a profound truth that the Tao, the way, reveals itself most clearly in the patterns, movements, and quiet wisdom of the natural world. To live in accordance with the Tao, Lao Tzu suggests, we must reawaken our connection to nature, not only as a physical setting, but as a guide, a teacher, and a mirror for our own lives. In modern times, this message has become more vital than ever. We live in an era marked by disconnection from the land, from the sky, from the cycles that once shaped human life. Artificial environments, screens, and fast-paced routines have dulled our sensitivity to the subtle messages of nature. Lao Tzu reminds us that we are not separate from the earth, we are of it. To forget this is not only to lose our environmental stewardship, but to lose a part of ourselves. Returning to nature means more than going for walks in the woods or admiring a sunset. It means remembering how to live in harmony with what is, instead of constantly trying to bend the world to our will. Nature doesn't rush. Everything gets done. The seasons do not compete, yet each fulfills its role. The tree grows not by striving, but by responding to light, rain, and soil. The river moves forward not by force, but by yielding. Lao Tzu uses these images to show us how to live with grace, acceptance, and flow. He encourages us to learn from nature's example, its patience, its adaptability, its ability to find balance without effort. In nature, no need to prove, to boast, or to control. There is only the unfolding of what is true and necessary. When we align ourselves with that same natural unfolding in our own lives, we find greater peace and purpose. We begin to trust the process instead of resisting it. Moreover, nature teaches us about cycles, birth, growth, decay, and renewal. These are not failures or flaws, but essential parts of the whole. As the leaf falls so that the tree may rest and renew, we too must learn to let go, to rest, to allow parts of our lives to die so that something new can be born. Lao Tzu saw in these natural patterns the blueprint for human existence. When we ignore them, we suffer. When we embrace them, we thrive. Nature also humbles us. It reminds us that we are not masters of the world, participants in a vast, interconnected web of life. This humility is at the heart of Taoism. When we observe the mountains or the ocean, we are reminded of how small we are and how magnificent life is. Perspective cultivates awe, respect, and a quieter, more grounded way of being. Returning to nature also means simplifying our lives and returning to what is essential. Just as a tree does not hold on to dead leaves, too must release what no longer serves us. Just as the earth does not hoard, but gives and receives in balance, we must learn to live with generosity and restraint. Nature knows enough. It does not overreach, and yet it sustains all things. This is a powerful metaphor for our own lives. We do not need more to be whole. We need to live in rhythm with what is already present. In Taoist thought, nature is not something to conquer or exploit. It is something to revere, to listen to, and to walk alongside. To return to nature is not to regress or abandon civilization. It is to remember our roots, to restore our balance, and to realign ourselves with a deeper wisdom than the noise of modern life can offer. In doing so, we find not only a more sustainable way of living, but also a more meaningful, soulful one. Through nature, Lao Tzu reminds us that the Tao is not distant or mystical. It is under our feet, in the breeze, in the silence of the night, in the turning of the seasons, and in the stillness we carry when we remember who we truly are. So, what did Lao Tzu know that we seem to have forgotten? He knew that life is not meant to be controlled, but embraced. That strength is found in softness, that by emptying ourselves we become full. That simplicity, humility, patience, and harmony with nature are not weaknesses, but the foundation of true wisdom. He saw the world not as something to dominate, but as something to flow with. In the rush of modern life, we've strayed far from these timeless truths. We grasp, we overthink, but perhaps in revisiting Lao Tzu's words, not just as ancient philosophy, but as living guidance, we can begin to remember. Remember how to breathe more deeply, listen more closely, and live more gently. Let us not treat his teachings as distant echoes from another era, but as a compass, still pointing us toward peace, purpose, and the quiet strength of simply being. May we learn, once again, to walk the way.